Matt Barrett joins Small Steps, Big Wins today. Matt is a financial advisor at Barnum Financial Group who provides a full range of financial services to individuals and families. He is a self-described lifelong learner who has the strong work ethic and commitment to his clients. Today he's going to talk all about that and more, including his career in the industry. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right, Matt Barrett, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm so happy to have you on the show today, and it's nice. Many of mine are in Zoom. It's nice to have you face-to-face, home game here in Shelton, Connecticut. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Same. Watching you for the last 10 plus years now, it's been really fun, and you have some really unique skill sets. But before we dig into some of that, let's start at the beginning. So you're on your 30th anniversary in the business.
I am.
Tell me how you got started and how'd you end up finding your way into the financial service industry?
So when I was growing up, I was fairly entrepreneurial. So I sold popcorn, I sold lollipops, I sold hot dogs. I had that entrepreneurial spirit from the very beginning.
Wow.
And my older brother, Dave, was in sales. So he encouraged me to go that same direction. So I thought I was always good with money. So I thought the combination of money management and being in sales, financial advisor seemed to be that exact fit. And then I had on-campus recruiting at UConn. I started my career there, and I've been merged a few times, but it's the only job I ever had.
It's amazing, though, hearing that. And I know you started at New England. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, where my career started at MetLife was more of it was entrepreneurial, but it was more of a managerial system, but New England was way more of an entrepreneurial model. It's kind of funny how you were so advanced in your thinking that you ended up there and you started this great practice that you've built. What happened when you started? Like, how did you hit the ground running, or did you say, this is hard, or what was it like mentally in the beginning?
Starting it was tough, especially back then. We didn't have the structure we have here. We didn't have the leads program. I was a sole practitioner, so I was on my own. I did fine, and we had fairly slow growth. But my first 20 years in the business, I was on my own. But at that point, we started the teaming model, and that really changed everything going forward. So at that point, we've just had exponential growth ever since.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Matt, when you think about it, 20 years as a solo practitioner, you come in with this entrepreneurial spirit. But, when I look now at where you are, the growth, you were kind of like a hockey stick, like you're going along and you're growing every year and you're challenging yourself. And not only you're an entrepreneur, you're I'll say a quiet competitor. I've watched with your, training for marathons and the way you act, and you like to compete, but in a good way. And I would say you probably are one of the guys that I see that competes with himself more than anybody else. But, you watch this industry make a really big change. Probably 15 years ago, you were probably a few years behind in the teaming thing, but then you really grabbed teaming. And I look today at the team that you've built. Why don't you kind of walk us through what the team looks like? And then I'll go backwards to the beginning of that. Well, what's it look like now?
So we've had a lot of growth, like I said. So right now I'm the team lead. I have two partners on the sales side, which are Chris and Ryan. And then we have 4 staff currently, which is Jeremy, Brandon, Xander, and Lindsay. And we all have our own roles and responsibilities. One of the problems with the growth is making sure that we have everybody in the right seats. So a challenge around growth is making sure to continue with the client service model and make sure our production and everything just continues to roll along. So one thing we've done to address that is cross training in reference to everybody on the team so that we can make sure everything's always going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's interesting. You bring up one of my favorite business books when you said getting the right people on the right seats. When you think of the book Good to Great, it's literally one of my favorites. And what he says in that you got to get the right people on the team, then get them in the right seats. And that's an evolution. It's not and it just keeps evolving to do that. When you look out forward, what's that look like for you guys going forward?
Definitely more continued growth. The industry seems to be getting more and more specialized. So I want to make sure to check every box, not only for a team, but for our clients. And the better experience they have, the better experience we have.
Yeah. And it's interesting, we always talk and, when you guys read Matt's bio before you listen to the show, he calls himself really a lifelong learner. Seeing that a little bit, me from the outside looking in, I remember in 2000, I want to say it was probably 2021, the end of 2020, I came to you and I said, hey, we have this program that we just launched here called Transition Solutions. And for all the listeners that might not know, it's a program where we're getting lots of opportunities, almost 1 million a year, where these people are separating employment for one of 3 reasons, retirement, getting a new role, or getting laid off. And Matt and his team is helping those people to figure out what to do with their protection side and their investment side. But I remember coming to you and saying, hey, Matt, because I watched, it was very interesting. Most advisors pre-COVID, right? I always say there was a lot of bad that happened with COVID, way more bad than good. But then one good thing was we got this great gift of technology and Zoom. But I watched you for most of the time that I've been working with you. You did a lot of your business over the phone versus going out like most advisors did. And I said, oh, wow, this is like a natural for you. And I remember there was videos that we had, and I remember you going home and telling me, hey, I took those videos, I watched them over and over and really learned. And then I want to say that you came in a program that was new to you because many advisors were using it in its infancy stages. You and your team hit the ground running. So talk about the lifelong learning and how that all happened for you and how it all clicked.
Yeah, one of the things I always think of is never give up on the things that you do well, but always know you can do them better.
Okay.
And that was exactly what that was, because I was doing fine and I was doing that at some level, but an opportunity was there and we took advantage of it. And I'm never going to be the one that says that I do everything the best way. I'll certainly work hard and my focus and work ethic is extreme.
I agree.
But I also am open to new concepts, without question. Yeah,
and it's interesting, though, that you say that because I think that you had this fire hose come at you and you're focused and driven, but you're also very calm how you approach things. Maybe I'm not in your team meeting, so I would say you're calm, to me at least. But your demeanor is that. But this was a challenge that now you went from seeing, making these numbers up, and maybe you can help clarify, but seeing, 10 or 12 people a week, phone / face to face, to now maybe seeing 30 or 40 a week. So it wasn't like it was a storm, not like a calm storm. So how did you handle that yourself? Forget about the team for a second. How did Matt do that as a practitioner?
Well, like you said, COVID was terrible, but there were positives in having the access to Zoom was a big deal. So instead of going to Manhattan and seeing 3 people and maybe actually one of them doesn't happen, so I might see 2 and that's an entire day.
Yes.
I have, with technology availability, I can see, 1 or 2 people an hour as opposed to 1 or 2 people a day. So it was a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And having the service model and clientele I have, that I've done a lot of face-to-face already, the continuation of Zoom or over the phone is significantly easier.
Yeah. So that's an interesting transition because you, not only the new clients that you're bringing on and the access to that, you switched your service model, which many advisors did, to probably 90% Zoom now and 10% face-to-face versus the other way around, which freed up lots of time and effectiveness. Mm-hmm. I think it's really effective. So how did that, from a mindset standpoint, let's go back to 10 years ago when you started the infancy stages of teaming. Mm-hmm. How did that change for you from a mindset? Because, you have this mindset is like, everything's on my back. I'm going to go get this done. And now it's a combination, right? It's still on your back, but you're really partnering with other people to get the results and do some of the different things that you're doing.
Yeah, so the focus has absolutely changed to long term. Previous to that, when it's just me and I'm just grinding it out, that's one it can be stressful at times, but there's only so much you can do in that regard. My team and my clients and drive me in that regard, and I take that responsibility very seriously.
Yeah, and I think that when I look at your team right now, especially your partners, you guys have just exponential, like literally, like I said, hockey stick growth. And, I have a saying that I use all the time that the best is yet to come. And I can say that's 300% true. And I think you being a lifelong learner has helped with that. What are some of the day-to-day challenges you have now that, when you were a solo practitioner, you maybe didn't, or pre-COVID? Like, what do you see as some of the challenges that you run into today?
So in reference to the challenges, or even before I get into that, it's how does the day start?
Yeah.
So
it's a great place to start.
I always make sure I am prepared for the day ahead. So I never leave the office without knowing exactly what I'm going to be doing the next day.
It's great.
And
go deeper on that, please.
And then when that happens, I have a significantly different day if I start at 8 o'clock versus 9 o'clock. If I'm in the office at 8 o'clock, the whole day is proactive. I'm doing exactly what I want to do in exactly the order that I prepared for, and still have time to handle client needs as they happen. If I come in at 9 o'clock, everything is reactive, and I'm fighting fires the whole day, and it's a completely different experience and mindset.
It's interesting. So it's funny that you say that. I remember when I took the transition to go into leadership and become the CEO of the firm. There's only 9 people here, so I wasn't like the CEO of this big conglomerate. But I remember getting into the office around 8:30, because when I was an advisor, I'd be out to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So I'd get some sleep, get in a little later. And then I remember seeing many advisors here when I got here. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to get in before these guys, like speed of the shop, speed of the boss, right? So I start coming in earlier. Then I can't work out late at night because I'm exhausted. And so I started going in the morning. And the earlier I went to the gym, the better my day was, because I wasn't rushing. And I guess what you're saying is that hour from 8 to 9 is almost like you're getting in the zone. You're almost warming up. You're dealing with some of the issues before the day starts. Am I correct in saying that?
Without question. It's just being ahead of the curve or behind it.
That's amazing.
That's what it is.
And then you don't have to take the fire extinguisher out and start doing that. So typically when you're on Zoom with your clients, are you running into where, you get Zoom fatigue, where you don't give yourself enough time in between the next meeting and you're rushing from one Zoom to the next, versus if you were doing that face to face, you'd have to give yourself some time to either drive if you were moving or walk to another building if you were in the city? How are you handling that transition each day?
I'm purposeful in reference to scheduling. So if a Zoom meeting typically is about an hour, I'll always block out for an additional half hour.
That's great.
So 2 things happen from that. Number one, the Zoom meeting goes late and I have time to handle it because, I'm talking to someone typically about their the money that they save for their entire life. And I want to make sure that they give it the right amount of time.
Yep. And you give it a right amount of time.
Exactly. Worst case scenario, it goes the hour meeting, and I can catch up in between, have a mind reset and be ready to go for the next one.
Yeah, which is awesome. And I think, for any of you that are driving right now, or if you're just sitting where you are, take a note on that, because I find that I remember this with people with appointments. I'd be sitting in the lobby, talking to someone that was just getting ready to leave, and I'd see a rep running out the door. And like, where you going, dude? I have a 2 o'clock. Where is it? Stanford. It's 10 to 2. Like, you're not going to make it. No, I'll be a few minutes late. And then the rest of the day is like that. And now I find that people are showing up late for Zoom. I have a little trick. I get on every Zoom 5 minutes before it starts. Now with Zoom getting better technology, they get the alert. So some people get on. It used to be my time to like zone out and meditate a little bit and just get ready for the meeting and get in the zone. Now some people jump on, but it's great that you're doing that, because I find that you're not able to make your notes, get your thoughts, fill the staff in what's next, and do what's coming to you. So one of the things, Matt, I think about all the time, and I think that this industry and sales in particular and being an entrepreneur is a game of inches. And, you don't need, when you look at your practice, you don't need an overhaul now to double. It's just tweaks along the way. So one of the things that I've spent a lot of mental energy around with advisors as I'm coaching people is this gift of technology and Zoom is a one-time gift. And what I mean by that is advisors that were at the top of their game and efficient and had the right infrastructure around them, maybe you can see 20 people a week if you were doing it the old way. They're coming into your office, you're going into the city and you're doubling up, like you said. Today, maybe that new number is 40 and that was a double, but it's not going to go to 80. So when you think of the growth, particularly, here you had some tremendous growth over the last 10, but really over the last 3. How are you preparing to continue to get that growth? And what things are you and your team really thinking about that are going to play into that, getting the next 20 or getting the next, is it just building infrastructure? Is it more advisors? Like how are you thinking about doing that?
So I think it's actually a combination of both. In reference to our various clientele, we segment them out. So I handle a certain level and Chris and Ryan handle below that. And then we have staff also in place.
It's great.
So it's just a matter of making sure that everyone is being handled efficiently and fairly. Because we definitely don't want anyone to be left out in the process.
Yep.
So we have to make sure to have infrastructure around it to continue that growth.
We're a big Salesforce firm here at Barnum. Is using that and the tool and the programs that are in there, is that helping you from an efficiency standpoint to grow it?
Technology, without question, is what that efficiency is all about. So between Salesforce and the structure and expertise that you've built here, which is second to none,
Thank you.
It allows us to be in a position to succeed.
And when you talk about infrastructure, you're mainly talking about how you're partnering up Salesforce technology with like wholesalers / specialists and something with ops and all that, how everything just integrates itself. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah, it's those things. But it's also the like Salesforce and just the general access to everything we need at our fingertips.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the team itself. And when I say team, I'm talking about my entire team. So, that starts at home with my wife. She's my rock in reference to, she's a business person also. She's a go-to for me in reference to a sounding board and someone we can challenge each other. And then I have my team here and then the greater Barnum infrastructure.
Well, when you talk about Amy, I could say the same line people tell me with Mindy, that I outpunted my coverage and I'm still catching up on that. So you've definitely outpunted your coverage and you got a great one. And you're right. And I appreciate you sharing that because, today, and I don't know if you know this, but when we hire mostly, if it's not an experienced advisor coming from a competing company, it's mostly a kid off the college campus. And we used to hire a lot of career changes and we always interviewed the spouse or significant other because we wanted to make sure they understood what they were getting into and that they had the right support. Today, with the young advisors, we actually interview the parents because the parents are so involved in these millennial lives today. And we want to make sure they're there. So if I didn't do that at the time with you, but if I had interviewed Amy, you would have got hired because I know you have the right support there. So that's great. And the team. So, and that's a big deal. And I appreciate you bringing that to me. There's 2 big words in the business today, and we've been talking a lot about scale. So let's shift a little bit to the word momentum. Mm-hmm. You have a tremendous amount of momentum. I would say that, knowing you and being in the industry already for 30 years, I would say and it's hard to believe, but you're more focused and more driven today than you've been. And it just keeps growing because you got that in you. Like, how do you keep your mental attitude and how do you, make sure you show up every day to perform at the level you do?
I want to be an example for my kids and also for my teammates. So at work, it's, I show that through work ethic. And then for my kids, I think it actually goes back to my father because my parents, but my father especially, they came from modest means. And for example, my father had to, work to pay for his own clothes in high school, for example.
Wow.
He didn't get to go to college, but he did serve in the Air Force. And one of his biggest goals was to make sure that all 4 of us went to college and that he paid for it all. And we came out with no debt.
Wow.
So he didn't get to do that, but he made sure that we did. And
you're paying that forward.
Yeah. So he wouldn't put that obligation on me, but I feel of it as an obligation to do the same thing to put my kids in an even better situation for success than I had.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think it's interesting you say that because I grew up with parents that they all tried to put us in a better position than they were. And my dad, you know, before he passed away, I remember having conversations with him and he was not as pleased with himself as he was with us. And I would say to him, hey, like I called him big guy. I'm like, big guy, your goal was to make us better than you. And you got two kids that have accomplished that. So you're the richest man in the world. Like you got to remember what the goals are. So I commend your dad and I commend you. Let me finish the question a little differently. I get what you did and with the kids, with your father and with your teammates, but how do you make sure, like, is there ever a day where you wake up? I was asked this question by a young professional the other day during an interview, and I don't do a lot of interviews. The question was, is there ever days that you don't want to like work out or days that you don't want to go here? And I asked it back to him and he said, I said to him, my answer was, I have such discipline that my discipline became a habit and my habit drove my behaviors. And so I don't have days like that because I'm so driven and disciplined that like getting up to work out, there's many days that I say, all right, do I want to work out today? But then the habit kicks in and I do it. How does it work for you? Like, cause you're saying like, I'm showing up every day for, you know, two different sides of my life. And is there ever a day where you're like, shit, I don't want to show up today? How do I do it?
Be honest with you, there isn't. So quick story around that is I think it goes back to second grade. So okay. I stayed back in second grade. I didn't read well. I struggle with that a little bit to this day. And as I'm going into second grade for the second time, I was like, I saw this material before. It was the first time in my life that I was actually ahead. I was always behind. And I just continued that. For the rest of my life. And then a funny story around that was I had neighbors move in and they were Harvard graduates. They were fairly young. And I said, how are you so young? The woman was 19 years old when she graduated from Harvard. Wow. She said, I started school early. I graduated Harvard in 3 years and I skipped second grade. And I said, that's ironic because I went to second grade twice. So we evened out.
I did sixth grade twice. So I get it. But I didn't see the material the second time better than I did the first time. So you were way better than I was, Matt. So, but that's really great. And I think that's the true sign of, we say there's no manual for a parent, but there's also no manual for an entrepreneur. And it's great that you share that because I think there's a lot of people that think about that and do that. As you took the journey, and especially 10 years ago to the team, right? You knew that this was already your career probably after 4 or 5 years, maybe even 3 years, right? Because this was something you were focused on. You might not have been at the success you are today, but you were successful and you knew that this was a career. But as you went into teaming and, when I look at the last 10 years, was there a time where, we call it a turning point or a click? Like, was there a day that it clicked and you said, oh man, like I'm on to something here? And is there some time that happened and you were like, oh yeah, now I just got to keep doing this and I know I'm getting where I want to go?
Yeah, it's the same answer I gave before, though. It was really when we started teaming. So when I went from 20 years solo to then hiring a practice manager and building from there and just the growth being exponential from that point, that was it. And
you had more fun.
And I just think that, success, however you define it is built on consistently being successful every day. It's absolutely have long-term plans, but make sure to achieve each step daily.
It sounds so simple, but it's really hard to do that and you're doing it. So when I look out, forward now and I say, all right, Matt, and I talk about, your whole team now, not just you. When I look out the next 5 years, you guys will double, maybe even triple what you're doing today. So Matt, as we come down the home stretch here, this has been amazing, but when you think of the future, and let's start professionally and then we'll go personally. What are some of the new goals and some of the things that you're really thinking about now for the future and for you and the team?
So last year was our best year ever. We actually were the highest growth team at Barnum, and to be able to celebrate that together as a team is significantly more important to me than individually. So that was a lot of fun. And then individually, though, I haven't said this out loud, but
I'm ready for it.
I'm really been focused on induction into the Barnum Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And I really hope that I'm able to achieve that this year. So that would be team-wise and individually wise.
Well, I'm glad you shared that. And I'm glad you shared that publicly. I remember it's kind of funny story that I have for myself. It was number one office of the year, my first leaders conference, and there was 2 firms competing for it. And they made it very dramatic, like 10 different things went down the list. And then the firm won. Everyone gave them a standing ovation. And I leaned over to Mindy and I said, hey, I'm going to win number one office of the year. And she said, okay, first you got to become a manager. And I'm like, oh yeah, don't get caught up in the details here, So I think, and it took 10 years to do it. So I think that's an amazing achievement for you and the team. So I look forward to celebrating that with you when you get there. And I know you well enough to know once you shoot your mind on something, you'll nail it. So, well, that's a great one. What about personally? Is there anything that, you're striving for, anything you have that's coming down the pipe for you?
Personally, just generally spend more time with my wife and kids. So the whole work-life balance thing is probably one area that I'm not great at, but so that would be absolutely one of the things. And just continued exercise. Like you said, I've run 10 marathons, and actually 4 was with a runner with autism, which were absolutely my favorite ones to run. But just to continue the exercise and healthier life and more time with family.
I think that's great, and I think the family part is necessary, and I think everyone, just for all the listeners here, be careful with the word balance, because every balance is in the eye of the beholder, and everyone has a different gauge on that. But let's spend a little more time on the physical aspect of what you just said. Mm-hmm. Like, I look at the highest performers in any industry. Most of the time, you have to be like a corporate athlete. So you have to have that, get up and move, and it doesn't matter what you do. But back to the beginning, when you talk, or the middle of our thing, when you talked about the 8 o'clock versus the 9 o'clock, does it also change if you get your workout in the morning and not get your workout in? Does that change like the endorphins and the dopamine in your body to your day?
It absolutely does, because it's a matter of where did my day start and where was it positive? So ideally, I get the workout in, I'm in by 8. So I've already had 2 successes to start the day. And then everything just builds from there.
Yeah.
I sleep in, I get in at 9 o'clock. Well, I haven't exercised. I'm behind the 8 ball, and it's just terrible going forward. So it's all about the preparation, not even that morning, but the night before.
Yeah. And I think for the young listeners here, the young professionals going into the business world, like, take that down for yourself, because, my morning routine is probably the most critical thing to my own success. And it's interesting, your night routine starts with preparing for the next day. Because once your day is over, you're starting your night routine. Then it might be family and how you have your meal and what time you go to bed and all that. But your morning starts with, your night starts with prepping for the next day. So that's amazing. And guys, just, I hope you go back and rewind on some of the things, because Matt, he's very, mild spoken, but he's giving nugget after nugget after nugget. So what's the last thing you would say, Matt, if you were starting your team all over again today, or if you're moving forward with the team, what advice would you say to someone that's listening to say, hey, if you do these 3 things, you're going to crush it?
I mean, the easy one is work ethic.
Yep.
I would absolutely rather have someone that has strong work ethic than strong skill, because I can teach the skill. I can't teach the work ethic.
Yep. If you don't have that drive, it's over.
So that would absolutely be number one. I mean, tied to that is focus. You have to be organized. You have to be, if you're scattered, it's not going to work. The business is tough enough. You're handling a lot of different things at the same time. So focus and work ethic would be mine too.
That's awesome. So, well, for all of you guys, this is a treat, Matt. And when I think of small steps, like if you go back 30 years, right, you were very fortunate to understand who you were as an entrepreneurial background. Also, what you liked, meaning finance and numbers and all that, found the career. And then you've taken just, I would say it's a very disciplined corporate athlete approach, disciplined, organized, like all the things you've done. And you just stacked one good day on top of the next. And then you wake up in 30 years. You say, oh my God, look what I have. And now the next 30 years is whatever you want it to be. You control that. So I can't thank you enough. And, what you said in the middle about your children and your teammates, I think that's a real one, because there's role models and then there's models. And you've been a role model to many people, and not just your teammates and them, but advisors from afar are watching what you're doing and saying, wow, I want to emulate someone like that. So I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And I look forward to inducting you into the Barnum Hall of Fame. And I know you're going to hit that based on what you told me. So I can't wait to do that with you.
I appreciate it. It's great.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you for all you did and for all your team doing for the rest of the industry and all the clients out there. So thanks, guys. And make sure you all look at us on Spotify, on Apple, share it, get it out there. And Matt Barrett, thank you again for all you do.
Thank you.
You got it. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.